We are now going to jump into reading comprehension. And the way this video is set up is two parts in one, because we have two types of reading comprehension. We have reading comprehension of literal text, imaginative text, which are also known as fiction. And then we have the reading comprehension of nonfiction. So the first part is all going to be about literary and imaginative text or fiction text, and then we're going to go over some questions, and then we're going to transition quickly into nonfiction. So let's start with imaginative and literal text. So again, I present to you the spectrum, and we're living in this world that is now beyond third grade and beyond. And children now should be able to decode and read words. Maybe they have a little trouble here and there, but they know how to break words apart to find meaning, to read. Now we're in a place where we are reading to learn. So not only are we presenting these fiction texts, but we're also nonfiction texts. And there's levels to the learning. So we're going to jump into what those levels are. If you've ever given a step test, if you work at an achievement first school and you've given a step test, which means the child read the books and then you have to ask some questions and a running record. Take a moment and think about that, and think about the questions that they have to answer during the retell, right? Or even if they do not have a retell, if they're lower than a step 9, I believe, they just have to answer questions, right? Those step tests have 2 skills in them. And I'm just preparing your brain for the section where we're going to write essays. What you're going to learn right now on imaginative and literary reading comprehension is key. I'm going to say that one more time. Key for the essay that you're going to write on reading comprehension. Knowing these levels, knowing what to find on these levels is key. And you're going to see that when I do the video for essay writing, how important it is. All right, let's jump into reading comprehension. Again, this is fictional text. So let me just write this if somebody's just jumping in. This is fiction, right? Let me get my pen. This is for fiction. All right, we have 3 levels of questioning and understanding. We have the literal, the inferential, and the critical thinking. So the literal are the factual information about the story. So just the facts, right? Inferential is the underlying meaning of the text. So I like to think about inferential when I talk to kids about making inferences. You are taking a little bit of what you know from the story, so a little bit of the facts, and a little bit about what you know about the world, and you're going to put it together. For example, sometimes a text won't tell you that the boy is sad, won't literally tell you, oh, but the boy was pouting and crying. A child will know that that character is sad. We'll go a little bit more into it when we break it down. And then critical thinking is to reorganize your thoughts and understanding to accommodate the new ideas and the new points of view that you just read. So basically what that means is thinking beyond the story. How does this relate to me? How does this relate to the world? How do I feel about this? What did I learn? This is both true for fiction and nonfiction text. So let's go into literal. So in literal, we're thinking about characters, sequential order, and general detail. There's when I worked in first grade, there was like this little song, I can't really remember, about the different things you look in the retell or you look in the story. Character, motivation, character traits, character feeling, right? Think about it, that type of breakdown. So in the literal and factual information, you have to get the characters right? You have to tell the story in a sequential order. You can't be telling me what happens at the end and then the beginning and then that boy that I don't remember his name and that happened, right? And you need to give me like general details about the story for me to truly understand that you got the facts at least down of the story, right? So literal is just the facts. Think about as character, order, and general details in the retell or just the answering of questions. Now we have inferential. And inferential, we have the character motivation, the character traits, and the character feelings. So character motivation, as we know, is why the character does what they do. Like, what are they trying to get out of this? The traits, right? A child needs to identify that if the character is pouty and complains too much, well, they have a bad attitude, right? That is them thinking a little bit about the facts in the story and what they know about their own life. Like, what would you call a character that is always pouting and always fussing and stomping his feet? That's a character trait. The same ways to identify character feelings. Younger books will clearly tell you the boy is sad, the girl is happy, right? The mom is sleepy. But sometimes it won't. And children need to be able to identify those moments. What is it to be sleepy? Oh, the mother sat on her chair yawning and her eyes were batting very slowly. Well, that lets me know that that mom is probably sleepy. So you see how a little bit about the facts and a little bit about what they know about the world. The next thing is critical thinking. And critical thinking are the big ideas. What's the problem, the solution? What lesson did I learn in this? And how can I apply this story beyond? Like, maybe I could write a different ending. So I want to give you some guideline grades. Please do not write these in cement. Every kid learns at a different level. But you want to think about literal facts in the lower grade, right? I'm not expecting a kindergarten to tell me about problem solution, lesson learned in a fable. But I would like a child kindergarten to maybe second grade. So tell me the characters, give me that sequential order, and just give me general details, right? And then inferential, when we're going into character motivation, traits, and feelings, you want them to really master this between second grade and third grade. And I'm not saying that a child in first grade cannot learn about character motivation, traits, and feelings. It can absolutely do that. The complexity of the text might go up as the grades go up, but a child definitely, even as young as kindergarten, can tell me about feelings, especially if the text is telling you literally the boy is sad. What is sad? A feeling, right? So think about, these are like guidelines as to what I'm expecting. And then let's just think about it logically. A kindergartner, a 5-year-old, might not know what traits are, right? And you got to do a little bit of teaching for that. So I'm not going to expect a kindergarten to tell me about character traits, but I am expecting it from a third grader and beyond. You know, why are they the way they are and how would you call that? And then critical thinking really comes in third grade and beyond. Because now we're going into more complex things. We need to think beyond. You need to make connections of what you know and what you're learning about and how you can apply this for the future. And pulling out that lesson is very hard, especially if it's not like a clear fable where there's a really big lesson at the end, right? It's a little difficult, but that's why I'm saying third grade and beyond. The higher the kid is in their grade level, the easier it will be to do. So let's put this a little bit into practice. Let's think about the story of the Three Little Pigs. So right now, just take a few seconds and think about what you know about the Three Little Pigs. So I'm thinking about first the facts, the literal stuff. So there's 3 little pigs and there's a wolf. It's something about 3 houses and it started with hay. Okay, and chin, 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 and blow your house down, right? Like, those are the facts in the order. Then I'm thinking about, what could have these pigs have been feeling? You know, guess it says, or at least the one I read, or maybe I'm imagining it, but the pigs were crying and ran away, right? If they ran away, they were probably scared. So you want to think about it like that. And then you want to think about we know the problem and the solution. Well, the houses kept blowing down. But, what is the lesson that the characters are learning this, and how can I apply it to myself? So right away, I'm thinking about my story that I already know and that I can probably retell. And let's break down how you would determine if a child who read this story truly understands comprehension. So let's go into the literal, inferential, and critical thinking facts. Under literal, we're just facts. So the fact that there's 3 little pigs and a big bad wolf, those are the characters. And that first, all the 3 little pigs built a house, one of hay, one of sticks, one of bricks. Then the wolf came and said, I'm gonna chin chin chin, and it went from the pig from the hay house to the pig to the stick house to the pig to the brick house. In this story, sequential order is very important. If I have a child telling me that the brick house blew down, and sometimes with the hay, I'm understanding that they didn't really understand how important the sequence of from hay to sticks to brick. Let's go into some inferential questions, right? Like, what is the motivation, the feeling, and the trait? Well, the pigs built the home to be safe, but the wolf came after them because he was hungry. How do you know they were hungry? If I'm remembering, there's like 2 versions of the story, and one of them, he says, I'm going to eat you up, and the other one I don't remember too well. But let's just imagine that the wolf, there's something in the story that tells us that the wolf was hungry, right? Well, the character, that was the motivation. These are the character traits. Well, the 3 pigs that was bad. The 3 pigs were smarter than the 3rd pig was smarter than the other pigs because he used bricks. Well, how do you know he was smart? Well, because bricks is what you build a house with, and you have the child explain to you why they're making that determination. And then to identify a feeling, the wolf was feeling confident because he blew the houses down, right? Blow your house down from the chinny chin chin, or whatever it is that he said. And he blew down the first 2 houses. He thought he was going to do that with the 3rd house, and he huffed and he puffed. He couldn't blow that house down. And so it's not factual. The story's not saying that he was confident, but a child can pull from that, well, he was getting confident. He was getting comfortableness. He thought he was going to blow down that brick house. He really didn't. And so now let's go into critical thinking. So critical thinking was the wolf blew down, let's think about the problem solution. The wolf was blowing down each of the houses, so the pigs ran to the next strongest house. The problem was that the wolf was blowing them down. The solution, they ran to the next strongest house. That's one of them. You can think of several of them. Now let's think about how this relates to the world around us. Like, what lesson are you learning? Well, you have the lesson of sticking together is safer. Like, why didn't the little pigs live happily ever after? Because now they live together in the brick house. They stuck together instead of individually living in homes. Pick good materials to build your house. Yeah, like maybe somebody wants to be a construction worker, an architect, and don't build houses out of straw. And why are they not strong? And going on and talk about that. I mean, we can relate this to science, right? To a certain degree, to STEM subjects. Then you have the smartest can be victorious over the strongest. That's a really profound lesson, right? Because the piggies weren't that strong, but that 3rd piggy was so smart, he was victorious over this big, bad, strong wolf and his ability to blow the houses down. And so how does this relate to me in the world around them? What's not nice to be a bully? Because that wolf was a big bully and he had his consequence at the end. In the story that I'm picturing right now, he fell through the chimney into the pot. And teamwork makes the dream work, right? These 3 little piggies now lived happily ever after inside the person. That can also be a lesson learned. So I hope this was a good illustration of how we break down comprehension from factual, inferential to critical thinking. Feel free to stop this, rewind it, go back to the original slide. Please, this is super important for you to learn. This is the way that you are going to analyze, For your second essay, they always give you a reading comprehension essay. It is always nonfiction, fiction, sorry. I've really never seen nonfiction text. And this is the way that you're going to be able to determine the strength and the weaknesses within the text. So it's super important that you go back to the other side that really breaks it down. Literal, you go into facts, sequence, and detail. Inferential, you go in for feeling, traits, and motivation. Critical thinking, lesson learned, problem solution, right? These are things that we already do in the classroom, we already teach, and I am just linking it to the content that you're going to take on the test. So let's go through some questions now. Which of the following strategies would be most appropriate to use to promote a second grade student's ability to analyze key ideas and details in a literal? So right away, I am pulling the grade, second grader. So think about what you're expecting a second grader to do. And key ideas of the text. This is living in level 1, which is literal, or you can call it factual. So let me actually call it facts. And remember, the facts are the character names, the plot, the sequential order, right? All those things. So let's go. Explicitly, so that's teaching on purpose. Explicitly teaching students the key features and conversation of different literary genres. Yes, literary genres are important, but we are definitely talking about a literary text, right? That's a type of a text. So genre is like too wide of a spectrum. No, we're looking for something about key idea, factual ideas in literary text. Promoting students to evaluate the significance of a story's setting with the respect of the theme. So this idea of theme right here is a high level, right? It goes with that character, it goes with the problem solution and lesson learned. Theme is too big. Think about a second grader. Like you might be able to start to introduce the idea of themes, but it's a very, very complex. So we can consider this too high, and this has to do more with critical thinking, right? You got to think beyond. Themes are about beyond. Helping students create a story map of the main characters in the story and the events in which they are involved. So remember, in facts, we do have the character, right? We have the sequential order of details, right? And just the big general details. Right there, I'm hearing several words that are going to help us. So we're going to go ahead and magic maybe that. Encouraging students to clarify their understanding of a story by reflecting on their personal experience. And I already said personal experience and how that relates to ourselves is a high level thinking, and this is critical thinking. So just by breaking this down and knowing what I'm looking for, right, key ideas, the answer is definitely C. So character and plot are, like really essential parts of the story. They have to do with details of the story. All right, let's go to 61. Here we have a 6th grade class. So think about what I'm looking for 6th graders. A 6th grader should be able to think at the highest level of critical thinking, right? So let's go ahead and read the story. After students in a 6th grade class finished reading a historical novel about the US Civil War, the teacher asked each student to bring in an object or a picture of illustration of the object that to them represents the book. The student must also identify a passage from the book that can use to support their choice when they present their object to the class. This activity is most likely to promote a student's reading developing by helping them understand the importance of. Think about that task, You read a book. You're asking a child to go home and bring an object. This child is about to make, these children are about to make a connection to something in their world with the story. That's super high level thinking, right? Could you imagine telling a 6-year-old to go to their house and get something relating to a Civil War novel, right? No. You can probably use a simpler book, but think about even for a 6-year-old to go home, and they really have to think about how this book relates to them in their world. So if this is like really high level thinking, so we know it falls under critical thinking. So we're looking for something that will promote critical thinking, right? Determine an author's state of implied main point of view. So far I have not talked about point of view. And point of view is actually a skill within nonfiction text. So we're going to go ahead and cross that out. So this is a skill. When you say point of view, that is a nonfiction text. Using text structure to develop the general summary of a literary work. Well, we're not talking about summaries of nothing, actually. We're talking about how an object of this child relates to a passage in the book. So their interpretation of that passage. Identify the novel's mood by analyzing the author's use of figurative language. You know, okay, so figurative language is the way that they describe what's going on that creates a picture in our brain. I mean, we could magic maybe that, you know, but I'm gonna magic maybe it because it kind of sounds like it because it's creating a picture in the kid's head, but not really. Let's see if there's a better choice because you never know. Maybe that is the best choice. Basing interpretations about literary works on textual evidence. So this word right here, interpretation, really embodies that critical thinking, right? This really embodies critical thinking. This right here is more of like a vocabulary and picturing type thing, even like inferential. So we are going to go with D. So D is because they are making a connection between themselves and objects of theirs to the actual text. Let's go to the last one. A 6th grade student had just finished reading a chapter in a novel and is getting ready to write an entry in their journal. The teacher could most effectively develop a student's literary response by assigning which of the following journal prompts. All right, so think about the task of independent writing in your journal. I know that I worked a few years in high school. They had to do this for some text. And even in 3rd grade, when they're doing independent work at their desk, they have to do this independent writing thing. Maybe at a really low level, I would have them do just facts about the story, who are the characters, right? But think about, this is a 6th grade student. And so we're gonna leverage the highest levels. So remember, we have literal or factual, we have inferential, and we have critical thinking. I wanna live in this world when it comes to questions. All right, let's go break these down to see which one is the best journal and prompt. Use new vocabulary words. What new vocabulary words did you learn when reading this chapter? List and define the new words from the chapter. That's a really good activity, but is it actually a good use of journal, right? Remember, journal is they put their own thoughts in there. There has to be a connection of self to text at a certain level. So this right here about new vocabulary words, it's helpful, but it actually goes into vocabulary development, right? It doesn't really go into reading comprehension, although it's essential for the comprehension of reading. What happened in the chapter? Describe 2 or 3 events from the chapter. Okay, so we're talking about events in a chapter. They're very factual. Details in sequential order. What do you think is the main idea of the theme of the novel? Relate the specific events in the chapter to the themes you suggest. So we're pulling out a main idea and we're relating it back into this chapter. That's a pretty high level because you're taking a little bit of the facts, right? A little bit of the facts that you know about the story, and how do you connect them? So this is inferential, a little bit of fact and a little bit of self. What characters are mentioned in the chapter? List each of them. That is purely factual, the list of characters. So right here, just by reading carefully and knowing our levels of reading comprehension, I go ahead and C is inference. Okay. So now we're going to jump into reading comprehension of informational and expository text. So this is nonfiction text. It is perfectly 100% okay to expose younger children in younger grades to nonfiction text. But the reality is nonfiction texts really start somewhere between mid third grade all the way up, when kids are really getting into content subjects, right? The reason why they go for literary texts first is because, you know, they're fun and imaginative, a little easier to comprehend than some of these nonfiction texts that can be a little heavy, right? There's also a lot of pre-teaching, especially in context with vocabulary words, and they're just background information, right? Think about when you are in science or social studies, you can read an article, but there's a lot of teaching that has to go with that, understanding that has to go with that in order for that text to connect. And although you can do it lower grades, that ability to truly comprehend and retain that information comes with higher grades. So when I think about nonfiction text, I'm thinking already like mid to upper third grade and all the way up. Again, not saying you cannot do this with younger grades, but just keep that in mind. I still have not seen any essay prompting for nonfiction text. They might do that in the future, I don't know. So just in case, let's move on. All right, reading comprehension test. Reading comprehension for nonfiction. Same thing, we're gonna break it down into literal, inferential, and critical thinking. Same thing, but now it's gonna look a little bit different, right? In literal, we're basing on factual information from the text. Inferential, we're living in this world of point of view. And critical thinking, we're going to think about why this text is important, especially for me to learn and for the world to learn. So let's go into literal, excuse me. For literal, it's just stuff that will never change. The title and the author would never change. The date of when is written, sometimes that is incredibly relevant, especially with the example that I have prepared. The 5 W's and the H, who, what, where, why, and how. Like, these things do not change, right? They are just very super factual inside of the text. And then what is the main idea? What is the point of this? Main idea actually probably lives a little bit in inferential and critical thinking, but it doesn't change. And we can sometimes pull it out with one sentence, right? That thesis sentence, the way we know it. And for kids, it's main idea. Let's look at inferential. And so inferential does have a little bit of main idea in it, but we're living more in an author's point of view. So we're looking at what the author's tone is, what the author's purpose is, and who is this for? Who is the audience? Now, again, think about this. Like the complexity of this nonfiction text and how we break it down. Are you actually expecting a child in first and second grade to give you tone, purpose, and audience? They could probably give you titles and a few factual information. But when we get into the world of tone, purpose, and audience, even for us adults, tone is difficult to identify, right? Purpose can be difficult to identify, but we're definitely teaching those things because it is important. Next thing is critical thinking. Why is this text important to myself and the world? So how does it relate to myself? And how does it relate to the world outside? Like, why is it that we're learning about this? And why is this nonfiction? Why is this a real thing, right? So important that we're reading and learning about. So let's go ahead and put an example into practice. So here is Martin Luther King Jr. and the letter from Birmingham jail. This is a piece of text that is nonfiction, right? And so it's one of my favorite things to analyze with students at any level. Like I've done this all the way from high school and then pulled out small things during morning meeting with my third graders for them to be able to mostly like interpret and see how it relates to themselves, but it starts building that connection to nonfiction text and events, right? And you can hear the words of Martin Luther King Jr. By the way, I absolutely love this letter, and that's why I always refer to it when I'm teaching nonfiction text or how to teach nonfiction. All right, so we have the reading comprehension. Remember, our first level is literal, second inferential, third critical thinking. So we're thinking about facts in the text. We're thinking about point of view of the author and all that goes with that. And how is this important? Again, this is a quick overview. We can get into a deep discussion about the literary, inferential, and critical thinking of this specific text. For the purposes, I'm just going to give the main ideas and the main points. So we know the title, Letter from Birmingham Jail. The author was Martin Luther King Jr. Knowing the date is important because of the climate, what was going on, and knowing where this was written is also important. So no, these are just facts that are super important and relevant to the nonfiction text. And the main idea is that there's a fight, there's a call to fight for civil rights, right? A call to stand up, a call to end hypocrisy, a call to end it to be pushed back and to do it in a peaceful manner, right? So these are the main ideas pulled out of the text. And again, you can pull out several main ideas. You can teach this at any level and get different, more rich responses. I'm just giving a general overview. Inferential, we're thinking about that author's point of view. So his tone was a dialogue to reason and also criticism on the white moderate, right? So he's trying to convince, like, this is important. Why is this important? And why is this important now? And then to criticize the white moderate that are not pulling nor here nor there, which is it's very parallel to some of the things that we hear now about if you don't speak up, you're not standing for nothing. If you don't speak up, then you're standing for nothing, right? Silence empowers, enables violence, and that type of thing. So he was very clear about this dialogue to reason, to convince you, but also to criticize, to get motion. And this is an invitation, right, for the Birmingham to support the African American residents to fight for their civil rights, right? So we have the tone, we have the purpose. This is a clear invitation. And it was directed specifically to the 8 white clergymen that criticized that it wasn't a right time, but also all those who are doubting the cause, right? Specifically, it was in response to what these 8 white clergymen said, but in general, like everybody who was going to read it, like if you think that we are wrong, if you think this is not the time, read it, because these are the facts that are going on now. So now we're thinking about critical thinking. And so a child now needs to make connections to themselves in the world. This is important for me to learn about because, right? And this text influenced, right? And have the child finish that. I didn't fill this in because there are so many ways this text can influence not only us as adults, but children when they read it. But you see how the questioning goes from just like basic facts all the way up to how does this relate to me and the world around me? What lesson can I pull out of this? What am I learning? So right now is a good time. If you need to pause, go back to that slide that gives you the breakdown of what exactly we're looking in literal, inferential, and critical thinking. Remember, we're sticking to facts, then we're sticking to author point of view, and then why is this text important? All right, so let's go and practice some questions based on nonfiction text. A teacher can best help 6th graders draw inferences from informational text by asking them what? So inferences is that middle one, and they need to think about a little bit about facts and a little bit about self. So this is the beginning of a statement, right? In my opinion, could be an inferential, could also be critical thinking, right? It lives more in the world of critical thinking because the child has to now make connection to the text to self. So we are looking for inferences, right? That's what that I directly means, is inferences. So I'm going to X that, or you can maybe magic maybe it. So now we have the passage suggests. I'm going to magic maybe that, because in the passage suggests, I already have a child that is about to say, well, maybe what's going on here, or maybe the author thinks, based on something that they see in the text and their own knowledge. Remember, inferential is a little bit of both. In comparison. So here we're comparing two things, and we're about to make a list of facts from this thing and that thing. So in comparison could be inferential also, but it lives more in the world of factual, literal. I'm about to list why thing A and thing B are the same or different. The author's first point, right? So the author's first point lives in the world of inferential, but in this world of point of view. So right now we have two selections that would be magic maybe. So we're going to go back and we're going to see how we can pull those. And I have this example, another example, which gives you this thing of author's point of view, which is an inferential thing, but also having a child make connections between the text and itself. So a teacher can best help a sixth grader draw inferences. So they need to be drawing their own ideas based on text. That's the real main idea of inferences. So the better selection here is B. I'm not saying that author's point of view is not a type of inference. It absolutely is. But the passage suggests is making a child take a little bit of the facts in there plus what they know about the world in order to make a conclusion. So B, to draw an inference in the text is to derive a conclusion that is not stated explicitly in there, right? Here we go, next one. So a sixth grade teacher gives students several persuasive essays. Persuasive essay is an essay that's trying to convince you of something, of why it's better. Great. So we can say that the letter to Birmingham was definitely a persuasive type of essay that presents contrasting opinions on current social issues. The teacher then asks students to consider the following questions as they read the text. So let's see what type of questions we have here. What is the author's opinion on the issue? What is the author's background influence? What evidence does the author support? So all of three of these definitely point to point of view. And remember, within point of view is definitely an inference. But this clearly is pointing to the author's point of view. So let's see which one clearly points to the author's point of view. Monitoring comprehension of inferential text. So yes, this is all we're doing. We are monitoring the information text. This is the general thing. That's exactly what we do when we ask the 3 levels of questions. Thank you. That's too general. Identify the theme of the expository text. Well, we already said it is a persuasive essay, a type of expository text, but we're not trying to identify the themes here. We're trying to focus within the author idea and all those things and why the author is putting it there and why the author is giving some background information. Draw inferences from the informational text. That can be one of them, because we said that point of view, author's point of view kind of falls into inference. And analyze the point of view in his expository text. So right there, the better choice is definitely B because of that point of view, right? I mean, undeniably, these two were great answers, but D is the choice. This is a positive in which the author takes a stand on an issue but tries to persuade readers by presenting an argument and evidence to support the text. There, right? So we do have other types of text where we do a little bit more of inferential workings of a little bit of the fact and what we know. Expository is really based around that author's point of view. I mean, even the language in the questions, right? If we look at this language here, all of it pointed to the point of view. All right, let's do this next one. A third grade teacher. So I decided to put this one about third grade because we want to see a lower grade. A third grade teacher periodically reads aloud from a chapter in a content area textbook. So let's think about it just to make this more lively. We are in science right now. And describes his thought process as the book reads, following the example. So you want to think about this as a think aloud, right? And the think aloud is a type of metacognition that shows how a person's internal thoughts are analyzing and drawing conclusions. So metacognition is that. It's just this internal dialogue that you have with yourself, this type of silent think aloud. Teachers use the verbal think aloud, right? Like literally, we think out loud so they can see it. But it's teaching that skill of starting to make connections internally. Let's read. The moon does not shine on its own. The sunlight reflects off the moon. I imagine that the sun is like a flashlight shining on the moon in the dark. As the moon rotates, only part of the face of the sun is visible from the earth. I'm not quite sure what visible means, but it sounds like it's vision, which I know has to do with the eyes. It probably means the part that we can see from the earth. Now that makes me wonder, why do we see different amounts of the moon at different times? Let's see in the next part of the chapter explains it. This is showing a level of metacognition. When the child is already making connections, trying to pull out meaning from contextual clues, and trying to just comprehend the text piece by piece. This practice is most likely to promote a student's reading proficiency by exposing them to new vocabulary in the content. So yeah, you are exposing new vocabulary, but this falls under vocabulary development. Modeling for them metacognitive comprehension strategies. So even if you didn't know what metacognitive comprehension strategies were, think aloud type of modeling. So we're going to magic maybe this because I do want to continue and read all my selections. Giving them an example of fluent oral reading. Well, that is really, really good, but fluency, remember, lies in the world of learning to read. So we're going to call this as too low. It's just way too low. Summarizing for them the main idea of the expository text. So never in this text was a main idea mentioned. So definitely modeling metacognitive comprehension. Remember, metacognitive means that thinking process, that internal thinking process to make connections in the text for comprehension and to try to figure out meaning of unknown words. So just that internal monitoring. And there it is. Metacognition strategy promotes students to think about their thinking as they read the text. So once more, I want to encourage you to really look into, look at this video. I really want to encourage you to look at this video once more. Really take notes about the levels, especially in the fiction text, because this 100% support your ability to write a really good reading comprehension.